Hmm. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Soul Sparkle Radio. I am so excited to have you join me this week, and also thrilled to be joined with my sweet friend Megan Hale, the founder of what I'm calling her Wild and Holy movement, and everything that encompasses. She's got so much incredible offerings and things going on, and really just this energy around the place where the wild and the holy parts of us come together with as much ease and grace as possible. So we're excited to have you here today, Megan. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
So I want to just start out with the one question that I ask all of our guests, which is, what makes your soul sparkle? What is it that just lights you up from the inside out?
This answer has changed so much over the years, but I think where I am right now, this day, this moment, the thing that lights me up the most is knowing that I'm being brave. Mm-hmm. I became a mama about 17 months ago, and I had a really rather traumatic birth experience. Could have died. Mm. And I had this really beautiful, vulnerable moment with my husband because I had been talking about enoughness for like 2 years. And this man was holding me and loving me and seeing me in the most vulnerable space of my life after just having my child and being on my deathbed. And this question floated up to the surface. And the question was, what would happen if you believed in yourself as much as he believed in you? And the answer that came up was I would be braver. And so ever since that moment, knowing that I'm being brave, knowing that I'm pushing my limits, knowing that I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone, although incredibly uncomfortable, that's what lights me up, because that is a feeling of deep integrity for me. And there's nothing like it.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of things right there to cover. However, I love the fact that word, being brave, right? Because I think for a lot of us, we have the next iteration of ourselves. We have bigger, bolder, more incredibly impactful dreams that we've maybe had in our hearts for maybe our whole life, maybe lifetimes, right? And I feel like stepping into that is probably the most important thing any of us can do, right? Being brave and doing our life differently. You know, a lot of times we talk about, especially on the podcast, around what would it mean to do your life differently? What would it mean to step out of your comfort zone? What would it mean to take your work, your life, your vision, your mission to the next level? And it feels that's exactly what you've done in this last season of your life. And what a blessing it's been for you to do that, because look at how now you're serving the world, right? And what happens when we all into them, and what level of service that we're able to create and complete. So what has it looked like since then? Like for you to allow yourself to be brave, what kind of has happened and transpired since that moment of recognition and permission?
Lots of things. I think the definition or understanding of bravery has greatly shifted, because I used to think of bravery as only those really big leaps. And now I've started seeing bravery as these really small steps that we're taking on a daily basis and being in real deep integrity from moment to moment. And that in and of itself allows us to prepare for those big leaps. So I think since then, gosh, so much has happened. Wild and Holy became a thing. And it really started off with this desire of wanting to help people live their truth and to give themselves permission to be wildly themselves, and also know that that is such deep, holy work of stepping into who you are here to be. And that has turned into retreats and coaching programs and a book that's in the works and a beautiful podcast that launched this year, and eventually a really big live event, which I'm so excited to host when it is the perfect time. So I've watched that one little commitment of bravery really start to ripple out into all kinds of different offerings. But I think the biggest part has been how I feel stepping into those spaces now. There's so much more conviction in knowing that this is what I'm here to do. And that doesn't mean that there's no doubt or no fear present. I think that's part of being human. But it means that I'm so much more grounded in my truth, and I trust that truth more.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on fearing less. And that has changed the game for me.
Oh, that feels so good. It also feels to me like kind of like much like from the place that I create my offerings or my events or experiences, it comes from like a deeper place, not like from my head, like this would make a lot of money, or I think this would be a great idea. It's like, I can't not do this thing. Like, it's almost like a birth, right?
I love that you said that, because I'm getting ready to have another baby in a couple of months. And I was telling my friends, I was like, maybe I'll take, a year off or so and really focus on being a mom. And my closest friends are like, I mean, it sounds good, but yeah, I really don't think you're going to be able to do that. And I was like, why? They're like, because you love what you do so much, and it's such a part of just who you are.
Yeah.
And that was like a really beautiful point of like just mirroring for them to give that to me, of like, yeah, I mean, that's how it feels. Like I'm just being who I am.
Yeah. And that feels really, really good, doesn't it?
Yes, because it's not like you're not searching for the answers. You're not pulling these things in. It's like you're not trying to figure out the plan. You just are. And everything comes from that place.
Yeah. Honey, real quick, if you would do me a favor and just pop off your video, just so that way the possible.
Is that good?
There you go. Yeah, that's better. So yes, and I want to revisit just that right there. And I think if our listeners are looking for the next thing, or their calling, or their whatever they want to do in the world, I think this right here is probably one of the most important lessons that I learned, and it feels like you've experienced the same. It's finding the thing that you would do, and people say this all the time like a cliche, like, what would you do every day if you didn't have to make any money? Well, the reality is, like, what is the thing that, like, for me, and I think for you as well, like Soul Sparkle for me is literally just an extension of my life, right? Like I create things and events and experiences that I would want to do, that I'm so excited about. And then I just invite people to the party, right? And it's really spacious, like invitation without expectation, like this is the new way of, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see me, but like business in the world. It's not about the grind, the hustle, the struggle, all of that. It's what lights me up the most, and what can I create that would be so beautiful and so lovely that people would feel compelled to come with ease and grace, right? So it feels like that your wild and holy, your whole movement, your whole kind of umbrella of everything that you're doing is based on that same thing. It's just simply an expression of you. You are wild, you are holy, you are the space between, as we all are, And by stepping into kind of the deeper truths of who we are, and if we get really, really honest and really real about what we really desire and what we really want to create, and then give ourselves permission, wow, like that is the magic, don't you think?
Oh my God. Well, here's the beautiful thing about the work that we get to do is that there's always another layer to go. There's always something new that's going to want to be created. There's always a new desire that's going to come in. There's always going to be a new invitation. And each invitation is going to require us to do the same work at a deeper level to step into this next thing. So what I have found is, I used to think like, okay, I have to have all this stuff figured out so then I can guide people through the process. And now with Wild and Holy, it's like this is like my mantra, this is my prayer, this is my life. And I just continue to do the same work that I'm guiding everybody else through. And I'm like, let's just do this together. Let's be braver together. And it's beautiful because we each get to be wherever we are in our life.
Yep.
Still do the same work, still partner with each other and support each other, and watch the whole collective expand as a result. And that is, I mean, how good is that?
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. So, you know, I think a lot of times when we are on this journey, right, of kind of like self-discovery, self-exploration, ultimately self-mastery, we are we're taken through, you know, it's not always like sparkles and rainbows, right? Like sometimes there's a process, right, to
oh yes,
to capture like what actually happened before you get to where you are. Because I know for me personally, it was a long road of doing what I thought I should do and being who I thought I should be, and then really this unraveling of kind of my, like, the deeper truths, and like you said, like layers, right, and going through layers to this now fullest expression of my soul. It's what I express when Soul Sparkle is like, it is the fullest expression of who I am. But it took a lot of time and a lot of tears and, you know, suffering. So was there a moment for you that like you had to go through some stuff before you got to the realization of this is my truth, like this is who I am? And what did that look like for you?
Oh my God. I mean, there's chapters of that for sure. I mean, I think it's a fairly common experience for us as women to really not understand how to do life on our own terms. Right. And for the longest time, my life was really trying to make other people happy and reach other people's expectations and make other people proud. And there became a moment where I realized I need to figure out what makes me proud. And that started to kind of shift the narrative. And where that question led was, well, if I want to be proud of myself, I think I also want to be happy. So what makes me happy?
Yeah.
And that turned into a beautiful exploration. But I think along the way, there were all these moments of like asking these big questions, but still running away from the answers because I was scared. I was scared of what those answers were going to ask me to do. So I feel like I've been kind of shying away from this concept of bravery for a long time in different ways and in different chapters of my life. But asking those two questions, I mean, those two questions came when I was 19, 20 years old, have led to some really beautiful explorations. But I also think, who is it that I need to be in order to be worthy? Has been probably the biggest question that's changed the game, because I realized that it's not only family narratives I've had to go through and peel apart. There's cultural narratives and societal narratives. And then there's also like these religious and spiritual narratives of what does it mean to be holy? What does it mean to be whole? And to really redefine that concept on my own terms has been life-changing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. And I feel like, I think for a lot of us, depending on how we were raised, like myself specifically, expectations, right? A huge amount of who we're supposed to be. What does a good girl do? How does a good girl act? And what does she say? And how does she talk? And how does she show up? And what does she believe? And like all of those things that then at some point in our lives, a lot of us then have to unravel a lot of that conditioning, that programming into what's our real truth? Like how do we really define that for ourselves versus how does everyone else define it for us? So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I feel like a lot of times we don't give ourselves permission to be who we really want to be, because we're afraid of disappointing everyone else or not looking a certain way or whatever. And I feel for myself specifically, the moment that I gave myself permission to just shuck all of that and dive into my truth, like the deepest truth, that's when the magic started to happen for me. Because I no longer cared, not, and I don't know if that's the right word, but I just no longer paid attention to whatever anyone else thought. I literally did not care. I'm like, I'm done. I've done it my whole life. I'm done.
You're no longer interested.
And I think for a lot of us, when we allow ourselves to really get honest and really get real, that's when it all started to unfold for me. And that's when what I would consider my liberation, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I think honesty, nothing happens until you get honest with yourself. And I think a lot of times we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to want certain things because that's what we think we're supposed to want. And then when we realize, maybe we go and we achieve those things and it's not nearly as fulfilling or satisfying, we have to give ourselves permission to want different things first and foremost. Because I think desire is such a birthplace for a lot of different directions and paths that we're going to take in our lives, you know?
There you are.
There you are.
Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. Okay, we'll just have to edit a bit on this. No problem. Okay, so if you can just where you were, because that was really, really good.
Hold on, what did you say?
Can you just rewind a little bit and then start again?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, repeat that last part that you were saying.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. So I think when it comes to being honest, one of the things that's really important is getting honest about what you really want. Because I think so much of where our life goes is based off of what we truly desire. And that truly desire part, that's a kind of an important piece, instead of I should desire versus I truly desire this. And that's going to be the birthplace of a lot of decisions that you make, a lot of directions that you choose for yourself. But it all starts with getting real and getting honest with yourself first.
Yeah, and I think, thank you for repeating that, because I think for all of you listening, I would say the one most important thing you can do to start your journey onto whatever the next iteration of the life that you're creating and calling in is just that. Get really, really honest with what you really desire, because I think a lot of times, especially as women, we're not able to get to the deepest part of our desire, right? Mm-hmm. We have so many overlays of, well, but that's good for my kids or for my husband or for my parents or whatever, and we never get down to the truth of what we really want. And it can be like a muscle. I don't know about you, but I started doing like little things, right, that over time would build and build, and then I was braver in asking for what I really want in bigger ways, right? So I think that has been really helpful for me to just start with small things. And, it's like that, it's that movie, Runaway Bride. Remember that one? About how do you want your egg? And every relationship, she would have her eggs however her beloved liked the right, or I want them fried. But like starting with little things like that don't really necessarily matter, but as you continue to speak your truth over and over and over, you get stronger and stronger and stronger, where then you can speak it in bigger ways when things really, really matter to you. So I don't know if that's a benefit, but hopefully learning how to say what kind of eggs you want is a good starting point for desire.
No, I think so too. I mean, it has to start somewhere. And I think that's one of the things that really prevents us from knowing how to do this. Like, how do we start tuning into what feels true for us? And we start thinking about these really big things of like, okay, how do I know what career I want? How do I know if I want to stay in this marriage? How do I know if I really want children? But if you don't even know what kind of eggs you want, you can't answer the small stuff. When you get to the big stuff, it's going to be incredibly hard. And so there's a beautiful metaphor that I love. It's like, don't learn to surf on the big waves.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really important that you start taking those baby steps just from a day-to-day place, day-to-day decisions. What feels good? What sounds good? What would just feel super delicious for you right now?
Yes. I also think too that practicing saying what you want, speaking your desire is in even like the little things around, because I hear a lot of women say, oh, I don't care. I don't really mind. Like, what kind of coffee do you want? Or what do you want to eat? I don't care. Well, do you not care? Or would it be better just like take a moment and take a deep breath and think, what is it? What do I desire? What do I desire? What do I really want? And then speak that. For me, that was also a good like learning and kind of like a one step at a time. What do you want? You obviously know what you want, but we're not trained and given the opportunity to say that. So these are just like little tips, if you guys are listening, that if you're struggling with speaking your truth, not like you're not being honest, but like really just speaking your desire, these are just little ways to begin. And part of my journey, it sounds like it was part of yours as well, because then I got braver and braver and braver in what I was able to speak into the world. And that's how I just got really honest. And I was like, no, this is what I want. This is what I desire. And
here's the thing about bravery. So more bravery is always going to follow truth. So if you want to be braver in the world, you have to know what your truth is. And there's two really big lies that we tell ourselves as women. The first is I don't care, like you mentioned. The second is I don't know.
Yeah.
Because we do know. And I used to tell myself I don't know all the time. And that's just not the truth. It's not my truth, nor is it your truth. And so instead of saying I don't know, I say I'm sitting with that right now.
Yep.
I'm feeling into that right now, because that is what is true.
Yeah. And even just asking that question, what is true for me right now? What is true? What is true? And like exploring it, because it's kind of like an onion, right? Like there's layers of truth, I have done this. I've kind of been in that inquiry. Like if something happens and someone says something to me or I have an experience that doesn't feel good, we automatically can go into like, well, this is why they did it, and this is what it means, and all these other things, versus saying, well, what's really true? What's really true about this situation? Is it really true that they wanted to hurt my feelings? Is it really true that they're an asshole and not very kind? Like, what is the truth? And I think if we can get to that place, always in all ways, it's an incredible way to do life. Because then you're always in truth. Your truth, you can see the truth in others. You can honor other people's truth, because when you're in your own, it's so much easier to honor someone else's versus wanting them to be a certain way or say a certain thing or show up in a certain way. If you're honoring your own truth, it's so much easier to honor the truth in someone else. And that's, to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think here's the thing that I'm starting to notice about truth for like where I am in this journey is that I used to think that truth, there was a certainty about it. There were answers, right? There was a knowing. And I'm starting to realize that truth is just as present in the places of questioning and uncertainty. Like, this is where I am. This is what's showing up now. And one of the things that I've really been giving myself permission for lately is I used to only speak when I had everything kind of boxed up in a pretty little package. It was all really neat and thought out and everything made sense and lined up. And I'm in some really messy places in my own personal growth right now, my own spiritual work. And I have this podcast where I'm sharing knowledge, right? Of like, how do we grow spiritually? How do we step into our fullest selves? How do we expand? And expansion is not all taking forward steps and having it all figured out and taking this really clear action. Sometimes it's actually being in the messy middle. And finding comfort there. And so this word being an inquiry, super powerful for me, because that can be just as full of truth. And I think as women, we put this pressure on ourselves that we have to have it all figured out. We have to be certain. We have to be sure this is truth. When there's this other side of truth of really allowing yourself to be in the questions.
Each moment can shift as well, right? Like the new realizations, the new revelations can happen to where, now it makes sense. Now that even feels more true than before, because I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So as we give ourselves the opportunity just to, like you said, sit with it and just think, what is this? What's showing up? What's showing up? What's going on? What's true for me right now? As those layers and things become more clear, then we're able to even speak it more. And I'm so much like you. Like, I used to be like, but it has to be perfect. Like, it has to be all pretty. And then before I can talk about it, and I'm like, shuck it. This is what's happening right now. And this is what is important to share. And I was always like that with relationships, right? So with my beloved, I would have to have it so like figured out in my mind and all sorted before I was able to communicate. And now I take a much more iterative approach, I guess, to where right now, this is what's going on. It might change in like 5 minutes or 27, but right now, this is what I need. This is my desire. This is what I'm feeling. And I think if we can just be more in tune with what that is, and then again, back to the very first thing you said, being brave enough to get it out of your mouth, right? Because so many times as women, we know, so we go through the phases, then we have the knowing, like we know what it is. We know our truth. We can't get it out of our mouths to speak it.
I know. That's where I was 2 weeks ago.
Again, going back to those iterations, those little things, right? It's easier to say I like my ex this way versus like, I want to have sex this way. Like, those are very different conversations. But
yes, they are.
If you can be like able to get those muscles built up, then over time it's much easier to say, this is how I want you to kiss me, or this is how I want you to touch me. Like, this is my desire, because you're used to speaking your desire.
Well, I think also too, there's something else that happens on a spiritual level. Like, the more you speak your truth, the more you trust yourself to show up for yourself. And I don't know how many years I've lived. And it's not like I'm living this 100%. There are still days I am terrified of speaking my truth, because the world can be cruel out there. You can be roasted and thrown upon a fire and burned at the stake or crucified for your beliefs. I mean, it is a major firestorm out there sometimes, especially when you're talking about very emotional issues for you. Like, I'm talking about God and divinity, and there are lots of very emotionally charged ideas around that.
Yes.
So I have to challenge myself to speak my truth in ways that isn't always comfortable. But the more I do it, the more I trust that I'm showing up for myself. And self-trust, oh my, like, this is the foundation for bravery, girlfriends. Like,
yes.
The more you can trust yourself that you have your back, there is nothing that you cannot do in this world. There is nothing that you cannot step into.
Right. And nothing that you can't handle too, right? Wow, that's huge. I find that one really, yeah. Yep. So I feel like there's, iterations again, and allowing ourselves to deeper desires of our heart, like the real to deepest desires, like the roots of our truth. Like, what do you really, really want to create? Who do you really, really want to be? What do you really, really want in the world? What do you really want your life to look like? And then allowing yourself to be brave enough to speak that truth, right?
Yes.
And then trust in it and know that you're going to be supported and held. And I think, too, the next piece of that is really surrounding yourself with people, whether it be, colleagues, collaborators, girlfriends, sisterhood, whatever the words are that you have surrounding you, whatever support, is only surrounding yourself with people that can handle your truth, the truth of you.
Well, let's keep in mind too, like, a life of truth and a life of bravery is incredibly vulnerable.
Yes.
So, and I think a lot of people miss this because my clients, they see me put a lot of brave ideas out into the world, and they're like, oh, it's just so easy for you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, it is not. Like, my throat starts to close up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to hide under a blanket. I'm like, I am so scared of how this is going to land with people.
Right.
But that feeling that pops up into your chest when you're about to say something important, when you're about to show up for yourself, that's how you know it's right. And so the women that you see are being braver in the world, it's not that it's easy for them. It's that they're embracing the process of vulnerability. And that is so incredibly important, of why, like, having people around you that encourage you to be vulnerable, that can hold that space for you when you're feeling incredibly raw and exposed, of like, oh my gosh, like, is this safe to do? They're your safety blanket. And we all need safety blankets, because this world can be really scary,
It takes a village to create magic and to create things in the world, because we're not designed to do life alone. And you're right, sometimes we need a little pep talk. We need a little help from our friends to say, you're not crazy. This feels really good. Like, go for it,
Yes.
So that's why I love creating containers where women can come together and be that, to show up for themselves and for each other, right? Because we're stronger when we are together. So I love that kind of both of our missions in the world mirror that energy of creating sisterhood, right? And truly places where women can come together and speak their truth and be brave and be held and be seen and be loved and feel supported and known and connected. I love that. So.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious about this, with your work, Haley, when you are, because I feel like so there's like two different sides of my life. The first half didn't really trust women. Didn't really have experiences where there was a lot of collaboration and cheerleading. There was a lot more competition and envy and jealousy. And that kept me kind of out of the game for a really long time. I was really scared of being in intimate spaces with women. And then once I started to put myself around women who were like collaborating with each other and celebrating each other and cheerleading for each other, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like a totally different ballgame. And now I love the containers that I create, because what I'm able to do is show women that this is how it can be. This is how it can be when you are willing to receive from other women, when you're ready to lean on and trust other women, that there's a whole tribe of people coming together who are really celebrating and cheering you on. And that, there's nothing like it in the whole world. It really is not.
Absolutely. You know, it's really a huge reason why I even started this work, this Soul Sparkle Living movement, is because I realized that I was incredibly blessed to have some girlfriends that I've had for years and years and years that I have that experience with. And I realized that there was a lot of women that I would come into contact with that didn't have that opportunity and really had that longing. It was a longing of their heart.
Oh,
right?
it's such a deep longing. Yes.
And so I really wanted to create that space and that opportunity for them to come together. And one of the first things we do, like when I do a soiree, it's share with us what you're celebrating. Like, what are you super excited about right now? Because I think a lot of times, you know, when you start to shine and other women are in that place of like, you know, jealousy or whatever, you don't feel safe to share and sparkle, right? So, you know, I want to give them the opportunity to celebrate. Let us celebrate that win with you, right? And then also, what are you calling in? Like, what are you wanting to create? Because I think there's power when we speak our desires and our dreams out loud.
Yes.
We can come alongside each other and help those dreams come true. And, you know, just the one story that comes to mind is when I was standing on I asked the collective, the leader of this women's collective that was going to do our jewelry line, and I said, what's your dream? Like, what do you want to create? And she said, we want to live on a farm, and we all want to live in a house that is safe. We want to grow produce and vegetables so we can live off the land and also sell it at the market. And I'm like, all right, that's happening. Like, okay, that's your dream. Here we go. And now we're building this. We're on the third house right now. And I just got notification that we've got funding for the next one. It's like,
oh, so good.
The power that happens when women come together to support each other's dreams is so beautiful. And it's so much more impactful than when we just feel like we're on our own. So,
yeah. I think the thing that women, we forget a lot is that we are major visionaries. Like, we can hold space for a vision for somebody else until they're ready to step into it. Yes. And what I have seen in the circles that I have been part of and the circles that I help create is that when you're holding a vision for another woman, what you're basically doing is you're not letting her forget who she is and what she's capable of.
Exactly.
And that kind of pouring into that kind of love, that kind of encouragement, it's like you're being supported and lifted and raised up. And it's like you start to become that woman. You start to become the woman that other people are seeing you as. And It makes your expansion just a little bit easier.
Yeah. And what a beautiful gift, right? They were able to give each other is the gift of, I see what's possible for you. I see that dream coming true, and I believe that it's happening. And let's just be thankful in advance that everything that you've ever been dreaming of is on its way to you. Like that kind of blessing is so incredibly powerful, because sometimes through the eyes of a sister, they can see for ourselves, you know? So I think that's why it's so beautiful to come together in these ways that we do, because it does empower and it does encourage and it does inspire for us to all do more and be more, whatever that means for us, right? So we all have different paths, but man, it's a beautiful thing when women to come together and allow ourselves to be seen and witnessed and encouraged in that way. I just think it's so beautiful. So
me too.
I love it. And I could probably talk to you for days, so we might have to do like what I'd love to do is just, you know, again, say thank you for the work that you're doing in the world, for being who you are, for being a bright light. for being brave enough to go into those places that are messy, and allow people to go there with you, so that way they can explore more of what their truth is and what might be possible for them as well. And so I honor that, and I honor the work that you're doing in the world and who you are. And I appreciate you for being here today and all of these just really great lessons of wisdom and grace that people can hopefully take with them and embody little parts and pieces, whatever feels true for them, that they can incorporate into their own lives. So I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Haley. And you're just such a shining star.
Oh, you're so sweet. And for all of you listening, we'll make sure to drop Megan's information into the show notes, so that way you have access to all of her good, wonderful blessings. And thank you again for everyone that's tuned in and for listening. We appreciate you so much, and we will look forward to the next episode of Soul Sparkle Radio.